The rain fell in steady drops that washed the blood and dust from the stone streets of Leverin. Smoke curled up from the broken walls of the city, and the air smelled of iron and wet ash. The war had reached the gates of Ivory Keep, the great castle that stood on the hill above the river. It had once been a place of light, where banners flew high and music floated from open windows. It was a fortress of echoes and fear. Ethan Ward, a young field medic, ran through the narrow alleys, carrying a leather pack full of herbs and bandages. His hands were cut and dirty, his clothes torn. He had not slept in 2 days. Every cry from the wounded seemed to call his name, and he moved from one broken body to another, tying cloths, giving water, whispering words of comfort that felt small against the pain around him. A soldier stumbled toward him, clutching a red-stained arm. Ethan helped him into the shelter of an old archway and began binding the wound. When he looked up, rainwater dripped from his hair into his eyes. "Hold still," he said quietly. The soldier did not argue. The sound of hooves broke through the storm. 2 royal guards appeared on horseback, their cloaks heavy with water. The taller one shouted over the noise, "Memetic, the queen is hurt! Come quickly!" Ethan froze. He had heard whispers in the camp that the queen had led her army into battle herself, that she had fought on the ramparts beside her knights. He never believed them. Queens did not fight. They commanded from safe towers. But the fear in the guard's voice was real. He helped the injured soldier lie back against the wall, grabbed his pack, and followed the guards up the winding path toward the keep. The city below groaned with battle sounds. Fires flickered through the mist. As they climbed, arrows whistled in the air and struck the stones with sharp cracks. Ethan ducked behind a low wall, his heart beating so loudly he could barely hear anything else. The gates of the keep stood open. Royal flags hung half-torn above them. Inside, the hall smelled of smoke and medicine and despair. Women ran with bowls of water. Soldiers carried stretchers. A few priests knelt beside the dying, whispering prayers that mixed with the wind. Ethan wanted to stop and help, but the guards pushed him onward. They led him up marble stairs into a quiet corridor. And the silence here was thick, like breath held too long. Last they stopped before a tall wooden door. One guard knocked once and said, "Your Grace, we have brought a healer." From inside came a weak answer, "Enter." The guard opened the door and motioned Ethan in. The room was dim. The curtains were drawn, though flashes of lightning slipped through the cracks. On a high chair near the hearth sat Queen Helena. Her armor was still on, dark with rain and blood. One hand gripped the carved arm of the chair, the other pressed against her side beneath the edge of her breastplate. Her hair, once gold in the sunlight, now clung to her face. She looked up at Ethan with eyes as sharp as steel. "You are the healer?" "I am," he said, his voice quieter than he expected. "Show me the wound." The guards hesitated at the door. Helena waved them away. They bowed and left, closing the heavy door behind them. The sound of their boots faded. Now it was just the two of them and the soft ripple of the fire. Ethan set down his pack and approached carefully. He could see blood seeping through a tear in her armor. It had darkened the cloth beneath. He tore a strip from his sleeve and knelt beside her. "This may hurt," he warned. Helena gave a short laugh. "Pain and I are well acquainted." She tried to sound calm, but her breath trembled. He loosened the armor and lifted it gently. The wound was worse than he feared, a deep gash where the metal had been forced inward. Blood glistened on her skin, mixing with rainwater. He pressed the cloth to it and felt her tense beneath his hands. For a moment, the room was silent, but for their breathing and the beating of the storm outside. Ethan worked quickly, cleaning the wound with water from his flask, whispering under his breath to keep his hands steady. "You risk much touching the queen?" Helena said after a moment. Her tone was soft, almost teasing, but there was pain behind it. Ethan looked up. "I risk more if I do nothing." Her lips twitched, a hint of a smile. Then she closed her eyes. "You speak boldly for a healer. I speak honestly, Your Grace." Her face relaxed a little. "Then heal me, honest man. Leverin still needs its queen." Ethan nodded and reached for fresh bandages. As he wrapped the cloth around her, thunder shook the windows, and somewhere in the distance, a bell rang. The battle outside had not ended, but inside that room, a quiet war of its own was being fought, one between duty, pain, and the strange trust that had begun to grow between a queen and a common man. The rain had slowed by the time Ethan finished cleaning and bandaging the queen's wound. The firelight threw soft gold on the stone walls, making the room seem warmer than it was. Queen Helena sat still and watched him work, her face calm though her hands gripped the edge of her chair. Every so often a shiver passed through her, but she did not complain. Ethan tied the last cloth around her side and leaned back to look at his work. "It should heal well, Your Grace," he said, his voice quiet but sure. "The cut went deep, but missed the organ. You will recover if you rest." Helena gave a slow nod. "Rest," she repeated, as if the word itself was strange. "There is little peace for a queen to rest in." He met her eyes for a moment and saw the weight she carried there. They were not the eyes of someone born to rule from comfort. They were the eyes of someone who had earned her crown through effort and sacrifice. He wanted to say something to ease her burden but could not find the right words. Outside bells rang again, sharper this time, and the floor trembled slightly. Ethan turned toward the window, but Helena's voice stopped him. "They would never dare breach the inner walls," she said firmly. Then, after a pause, she added more softly, "Though our confidence has cost us much already." He set aside his pack and rose halfway to his feet. "The enemy reaches this level, Your Grace. You must be moved somewhere safe." Helena gave a small laugh that carried pain and pride together. "If I flee, the kingdom loses its spine," she said. "No, I stay here, and so will you, if I command it." Ethan hesitated. He had served soldiers and captains, even princes once, but never a queen so direct. She spoke to him not like a ruler giving orders, but like an equal sharing a truth. There was something disarming about it, something that made him forget fear. "Then I stay," he said, and sat back beside her. For a while, neither spoke. The fire popped softly. The smell of damp armor and blood filled the air. Lana's breathing had steadied, though her face was pale. "You speak plainly," she said at last, turning her head slightly toward him. "Most men stumble over their words when they stand before a crown." "I never learned how to speak pretty," Ethan said with a faint smile. "Only learned to stop bleeding." That brought the faintest trace of amusement to her lips. "Perhaps that skill will save us all," she said. Then her tone dropped, thoughtful. "Tell me, healer, what were you before this war?" Ethan hesitated. "A farmer, Your Grace. My family owned a small field by the river. When the war began, I joined as a medic. I thought it would be easier to save lives than to take them, but now I see there is no easy way in war." She studied his face for a moment. "And yet even now your hands do not shake." "They would if I remembered to be afraid," he said quietly. Helena's eyes gleamed in the firelight. "Fear keeps a person alive," she said. "But courage keeps a kingdom alive. You must have both." Another roll of thunder sounded beyond the walls, but this time it was mixed with something else, the faint boom of siege engines in the distance. Helena sighed and leaned back into her chair as if her body had finally admitted its exhaustion. Ethan wanted to tell her to rest, but before he could speak, she said softly, "Do you know why I went to the wall, healer?" He shook his head. "Because they needed to see me there," she said. "My soldiers fight better when they believe their queen stands among them. But belief has a price." She touched the edge of her bandage and winced. "This is mine." Ethan's voice came out low. "They will fight all the harder now, knowing what you risked." She looked at him, her gaze steady. "And you, Ethan Ward, what will you risk?" He blinked, unsure how to answer. At last he said, "Whatever I must, Your Grace." A long silence followed. Then Helena leaned closer, her eyes half-lidded from weariness. "Only my consort could cross such boundaries before, and here you are, touching a part of me none else is allowed to touch. Tell me, healer, does your heart tremble from fear or from something else?" Ethan felt heat rise to his face. The question was half in jest, half serious, and he could not tell which half dominated. "It trembles because a queen speaks to me like a friend," he answered at last. That made her smile, a small, true smile that chased away the heaviness between them. "Then, perhaps friendship is rarer than courage in these days," she murmured. The windows rattled as another explosion sounded, but still far enough away not to wake panic. Ethan glanced toward the door, ready for danger. Lena watched him and said, You have the look of a man who will not leave when told. I have learned that some patients heal best when they know they are not alone, he said. Her gaze softened. Then stay close, healer. I find the thought oddly comforting. He moved the chair nearer the fire so that its warmth would reach her better. The light flickered over both of them, and for a moment the storm outside seemed a world away. Helena closed her eyes, trusting him now not just with her wound but with her silence. Ethan listened to the dropping rain and the booming distance of battle and thought how strange fate was. A farmer who had dreamed only of a simple life now watched over a queen on a night that might change the course of their kingdom. He wondered if history cared about such moments, if the future would remember not the battles, but the small things. A gentle touch, a quiet voice, and the heartbeat that proved both ruler and healer were still alive. The sun never rose that morning. Thick gray clouds hung heavy over the sky, turning dawn into more of the same endless darkness. The battle outside the castle walls had slowed, but the silence felt uneasy, like the pause of lungs before a scream. Ethan Ward had slept little, sitting near the queen's chair, his head resting against the cold stone wall. He woke to the sound of a soft gasp. Queen Helena stirred beside the fire. Her cheeks had more color than before, proof that her wound had begun to heal, but the pain in her movements showed it was far from over. She looked around the room, then at him. You stayed, she said quietly. I said I would, Ethan replied. His voice was rough from the dry air. He stood and stretched. Your bandage needs changing. You rested well enough? I rested, she answered simply, though they both knew it was not true. The mind does not sleep when the kingdom bleeds. He knelt by her side and unwrapped the old bandage with gentle fingers. The cut had closed a little, the deep red turning brown at the edges. He cleaned it with warm water. Helena winced but did not move away. The fire cracked. For the first time since he met her, Ethan heard the soft sigh of a woman set aside from the world she ruled. It made her seem human, not distant or unreachably royal, and the thought unsettled him. She studied his face as he worked. You do not speak much, she said. Why? Words waste time when hands are busy, he said. Still, silence can feel heavy, she replied. Sometimes silence shouts louder than fear. He stopped for a moment, tying a new piece of cloth over the wound. He looked into her eyes. Then tell me something to fill the silence, Your Grace. Helena's gaze went to the fire. When I was a child, I wanted to see the sea. My tutors said it smelled of salt and freedom. I led armies now, yet I never reached that shore. Ethan smiled faintly. The sea will not go away. When peace comes, you will see it. She gave a tired laugh. You speak of peace like it is waiting behind the next door. Peace needs more than hope, Ethan Ward. It needs people who will pay its price. He did not answer. The bell of the keep rang once, a deep sound that made them both turn toward the window. A rider must have brought word. The battle was far from finished. Moments later, a soldier burst into the chamber, his armor dented, his face streaked with dirt. Your Grace, he said, kneeling, the enemy regroups at the outer field. By nightfall they may attack again. Helena sat straighter, ignoring her pain. How many of ours still fight? Enough to hold if we have command. But the soldier stopped when he saw Ethan. He frowned. Out. Your Grace, this commoner? He is not common here, Helena said sharply. He saved your queen's life. Speak freely before him as you would before me. The soldier lowered his eyes, surprised. Then we await your order. Tell the troops to fortify the lower gate, she said after a pause, and send food from the store to the wounded. No man defends his home with an empty belly. The soldier nodded and left quickly. When the door closed again, she sank back against the chair. Ethan watched her with worry. Shh. You should rest again, he said, his tone soft. She shook her head. No. A ruler does not close her eyes when her people bleed. But you should eat. You look as tired as I feel. He grinned slightly. I will eat after you. She smiled just enough to show her gratitude. Stubborn, she murmured. Ah. The morning stretched on with uneasy quiet. Outside came the distant clanging of hammers as soldiers repaired the gate. Inside, Ethan prepared a bowl of thin soup from the kitchens. He offered it to her, and to his surprise, she accepted. As she ate slowly, she looked at him with curiosity. You have no fear of me, she said. Others avoid my eyes when they speak, yet you meet them without hesitation. Why is that? Ethan thought before he answered, because I see not the crown but the person wearing it. Everyone bleeds the same. Wound does not care for rank. Her eyes softened at that. That may be the kindest truth I've heard in years. He looked away, embarrassed. It is only truth, your grace. A quiet stretched again, filled only by the tapping of rain on the window. Then she said, You risk much being this close to me, healer. I risk what everyone risks each day of this war, he said. My life. She shook her head. No, lives lost in battle are honored. Lives lost to rumors and whispers are forgotten. If the wrong ears hear of this of you tending me alone, the court will twist it. They will call it scandal. Ethan straightened. And let them. I will not regret saving a life, no matter whose. Her gaze lingered on him. In that moment her proud expression softened into something almost fragile. There are few who speak so freely to me, she said. Perhaps that is why your words sound truer than most. Thunder rumbled again, though faintly this time, as if the storm itself were tired. Helena looked into the fire and said quietly, When this is done, promise me something. What is it? He asked. If I do not live through this war, tell my people I fought for them, not for the crown. Ethan's throat tightened. You will live, your grace, he said firmly. The kingdom still needs you. I intend to see to that. She looked at him and whispered, almost more to herself than to him. Only my consort was ever allowed to speak to me in such a way. Ethan smiled faintly. Then perhaps your consort would have said the same. Her eyes met his, and for a long breath the queen and her healer simply stared at each other, two souls bound, not by duty or law, but by the strange quiet understanding born of fear, hope, and something new that neither dared name. The fire crackled softly, and outside, the storm slowly passed, leaving the world damp but alive. The day passed without light. Heavy clouds still blocked the sun, and the world outside the castle walls looked gray and tired. Smoke drifted over the valley, and the sound of hammers and shouted orders echoed through the stone halls of Ivory Keep. The men were trying to fix what could still be saved. Inside the queen's chamber, the air was calmer, but filled with quiet worry. Ethan Ward sat near the window, cleaning his bandages and sharpening a small knife used to cut cloth. Queen Helena rested in her chair, half leaning against a cushion. Her wound ached, yet she refused to return to her bed. She wanted to watch the world outside, even if it was broken. Do you ever tire of serving? She asked suddenly, her voice soft but steady. Ethan looked up. Sometimes. But when I see someone live because of it, I forget the tiredness. Helena turned her head slowly toward him. You make it sound simple? It is simple, he said. Hard, but simple. A faint smile touched her lips. Perhaps that is why you are different. You see life as something to be patched, not to be ruled. He shrugged, not knowing what to say. We all do what we can. Before more could be said, the door opened. A guard entered, armor scratched and dull from use. Your grace, he said, bowing slightly. The council calls for your presence in the war hall. They await your command. Helena tried to stand, but pain shot through her side. She bit her lip to stop a sound from escaping. Ethan moved closer, offering his arm. Let me help, he said. She hesitated for a heartbeat, then nodded. Very well, healer, but do not make me appear weak. Strength is not always in walking alone, he said quietly. Her eyes met his for a second before she looked away. Together, they left the room. The hallway smelled of oil and old stone. Tapestries hung crooked on the walls, stained with dust and smoke. Soldiers passed them, bowing quickly. None dared look too long at the sight of their queen leaning on a common man. Ethan felt their stares but kept his focus on steadying her steps. In the war hall, a large wooden table was spread with maps, candles, and scraps of parchment. Several generals and high lords stood waiting. When Helena entered, their voices fell quiet. She eased into the tall chair at the head of the table, still holding herself with pride. Ethan stood a few steps behind her, ready if she faltered. A broad man with gray hair, the commander of the city guard, spoke first. Your grace, we hold the lower walls, but our numbers thin with each night. If the enemy attacks again, we may not keep them out. Another lord added, the people grow afraid. Some whisper that the gods have turned away. Helena straightened, hiding her pain beneath her calm tone. Then remind them that the gods help those who do not give up. We will not surrender. We defend every stone of Leverin." The men nodded, but worry still clouded their faces. Ethan noticed it. He also saw how their eyes flicked toward the queen's pale skin and the faint mark of bandage beneath her armor. They feared both the war and her weakness. Helena saw it too. She rose carefully from her chair, bracing a hand against the table. "Do you doubt your queen?" she asked. Her voice carried strength. "I was on the wall when the arrows fell. I bled for this city, and I am still here. So will you be." For a moment no one spoke. Then the commander bowed his head. "You give us courage, your grace." "Good," she said. "Then go back to your posts and give that courage to the people." When the council left, Helena leaned against the edge of the table and caught her breath. Ethan stepped forward, concern in his eyes. "You should not push yourself so hard," he said. "I cannot let them see weakness," she whispered. "They already see strength," he told her. No one could doubt that. She tilted her head slightly. "Do you tell that to all your patients?" "Only to those who need to hear it," he said. She looked at him as if seeing him for the first time not just as a healer, but as something more, a man who carried his own quiet fire. She took his hand for balance, and for an instant the hall seemed smaller, the world outside forgotten. "You are the strangest man I have met in this court," she said. "You speak plain truth and do not kneel every second word." Ethan smiled faintly. "Kneeling does not stop the bleeding, your grace." A short laugh escaped her. "Perhaps not." They left the war hall together, walking slowly back toward her chambers. The corridors were emptier now, lit only by torches. From far below came the echo of marching feet and the distant hum of men preparing for battle. At the door of her chamber, Helena stopped. "You have stayed by me through hours when even my lords drifted away," she said quietly. "Tell me why." He met her gaze, unflinching. "Because you never gave up," he said. "And I will not leave someone who fights to live." Silence hung between them, not heavy this time, but soft and real. Helena looked down at his hands, still rough from stitching wounds, and said in a low voice, "Only my consort was ever allowed this closeness before." Ethan's voice came barely above a whisper. "Then I am honored to break such a rule." She looked at him for a long while, her expression unreadable. "This night may bring the end or a new beginning," she said at last. "If we survive, healer, perhaps I will decide if breaking that rule was a crime or a blessing." He bowed his head slightly, his eyes steady. "Whichever it is, I would do it again." The queen turned and entered her room, leaving the door half open. Outside, the clouds were breaking at last, and the first pale trace of moonlight shone over the battered city of Leverin. The war was not over, but for the first time, the air carried a whisper of hope. Night returned like a slow tide, filling every corner of the castle with shadows. Fires burned in every hallway, yet the air still felt cold. Queen Helena stood by the window of her chamber, her bandaged side aching with each breath. Down in the valley, the faint glow of enemy camps spread like a ring of orange around the dark city. The siege was not over. It was only waiting. Ethan Ward sat near the doorway, sharpening a small blade and checking his few medical tools. The strain of the past days had left its mark on him. His hands were rough, his eyes red from exhaustion, but there was still a quiet strength in him. When he looked up and saw the queen gripping the window frame, he spoke gently. "You should not stand too long, your grace. The pain will grow worse." She answered without turning. "If I sit, I feel trapped. At least from here, I can see the city I fight for." He moved closer, but stopped a short distance away. "The people still fight because they believe you still stand. That should comfort you." She let out a slow breath. "Belief is a fragile thing, healer. It can break faster than a sword." Before he could reply, a sound rose from outside the deep horns that signaled danger. Both turned toward the door as hurried footsteps echoed down the corridor. A guard burst into the room, his armor dented, his face pale. "Your grace," he said, breathing hard. "The enemy is advancing again. The attack before dawn." Helena's jaw tightened. "How many?" "Too many for tired men to hold for long. The walls may not last the night." She straightened and reached for her sword belt, though the movement made her wince. Ethan stepped forward to stop her. "You cannot fight now," he said firmly. Your wound will tear open. Her eyes flashed with pride. If my soldiers fall, I must fall beside them. They will not die alone while their queen hides. He met her glare without fear. You will do them no service if you die now. They need a queen alive to lead tomorrow. The room went silent except for the thunder of war outside. Then, slowly, Helena relaxed her grip on the belt. You always speak truths I do not want to hear, Ethan Ward. Only because someone must, he said. The guard looked between them uncertainly. Helena turned to him. Order every man still able to fight to the lower courtyard. I will address them from the balcony. The guard bowed and ran off. Ethan looked at her in disbelief. You plan to stand before them now? They must see me, she replied. If they are to face death, they will not do it in fear. He knew nothing could change her mind. So he followed her down the grand stairway, one arm ready if she stumbled. The courtyard, hundreds of tired soldiers stood beneath the dark sky. Their armor was broken, their faces streaked with soot, but their eyes lifted as the queen appeared above them. Ethan stayed a few steps behind her. The wind blew through her hair, carrying her voice far over the crowd. People of Leverin, she called, you have fought through blood and fire. Every drop of rain that falls tonight falls on heroes. The enemy believes they can break us, but they do not know our hearts. They can take our walls, but they will never own our spirit. A cheer rose from the soldiers. The sound rolled through the courtyard like thunder. Even wounded men lifted their swords into the air. Ethan felt the power in that moment. Hope flickered back to life like a spark on dry wood. When the cheer faded, Helena turned and swayed slightly. Ethan rushed forward and caught her before she could fall. She looked up at him and smiled weakly. There, she whispered. They will fight now. He helped her back to her chamber as shouts echoed through the night. Inside, she leaned against the wall while he checked her bandage. Blood had soaked through it again. You are tearing it open, he said. You must lie down. She shook her head but did not resist as he guided her to the bed. Her skin felt cold. If I fall asleep, she murmured, and the walls fall too, promise me you will save the crown. The city needs a symbol to rebuild. He looked at her, his eyes full of sadness and steel. You are the crown, your grace. Without you it means nothing. She reached for his hand and held it weakly. Only my consort ever spoke to me with such fire. Ethan sat beside her. Then maybe your consort was a fool not to see your heart sooner. Her lips curved into the faintest smile. And what do you see, healer? Someone who does not give up, he said. Outside, the clash of steel grew louder. The castle shook under impact. Ethan could hear the battle drawing near. He looked toward the door, ready to defend if the fighting reached them. But before he could move, Helena caught his arm again. Stay, she said softly. Do not leave me to the cold. He stayed. The hours that followed were a blur of noise, shouting, and trembling walls. At last, as the first edge of morning light broke through the smoke, the noise began to fade. The enemy, beaten back by fire and courage, retreated down the valley. When silence returned, Ethan looked down at the queen. She was pale, but her eyes were open, shining like the dawn that returned to Leverin. It is over, he said quietly. For now, she whispered. Ethan Ward, what will history say of us? He smiled gently, that a queen's courage saved a kingdom, and a healer's hands kept her alive to rule it. She closed her eyes, relief washing over her face. Then may that truth be enough. As the morning sun crept into the room, lighting the dust and smoke, Ethan sat beside her. Knowing that both their lives and the fate of the kingdom had been bound together forever by one night of faith, pain, and fragile hope.